Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devam Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jaya Mudiraye. We're continuing with our reading of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13. Dhritarashtra quits home. Today's text is number 29. Evam Raja Vidurina Nujena Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamidaha Chitva Shveshu Snehapashan Dhradhimno Nishchakrama Bratr Sandarshitatva Evam Vraja Vidurananujena Evam Raja Viduranan Evam Raja Vidurananujena
Evam Raja Vidurananujena
Evam Raja Vidurananujena
Evam Raja Vidurananujena
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamidaha
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamidaha
Praja Chakshur Bodhita Ajamida
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamidaha
Chitva Shveshu Sneha Pashan Dhradhimno
Vasveshu Sneha Pashan Dhradhimno
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Chitva Shveshu Sneha Pashan Dhradhimno
Vasveshu Sneha Pashan Dhradhimno
Nishchakrama Bhratr Sandarshitadva
Nishchakrama Bhratr Sandarshitadva
Nishchakrama Bhratri Sandarshitadva Evam Raja Vidurananujena Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamidaha Chitva Sweshu Sneha Pashandradhimno Nishchakrama Bhratrir Sandarshitadva Evam thus Raja King Dhritarashtra Vidurena Anujena by his younger brother Vidura Prajna introspective knowledge Chakshuhu eyes Bodhitaha being understood Ajamidaha Dhritarashtra scion of the family of Ajamida Chitva by breaking Sweshu regarding kinsmen Snehapashan strong network of affection Dhradhimnaha because of steadfastness Nishchakrama got out Bhratru by his brother Sandarshita direction to Adva the path of liberation. Translation. Thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the scion of the family of Ajamita, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, prajna, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus, he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation, as directed by his younger brother Vidura. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great preacher of the principles of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, has stressed the importance of association with sadhus, pure devotees of the Lord. He said that even by a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can achieve all perfection. We are not ashamed to admit that this fact was experienced in our practical life. Were we not favored by His Divine Grace, Śrīmad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, by our first meeting for a few minutes only, it would have been impossible for us to accept this mighty task of describing Śrīmad Bhāgavatam in English. Without seeing him at that opportune moment, we could have become a very great business magnate, but never would we have been able to walk the path of liberation and be engaged in the factual service of the Lord under instructions of His Divine Grace. And here is another practical example by the action of Vidura's association with Dhritarashtra. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was tightly bound in a network of material affinities related to politics, economy, and family attachment. And he did everything in his power to achieve so-called success in his planned projects. But he was frustrated from the beginning to the end so far as his material activities were concerned. And yet, despite his life of failure, he achieved the greatest of all success and self-realization by the forceful instructions of a pure devotee of the Lord, who is the typical emblem of a sadhu. The scriptures enjoin, therefore, that one should associate with sadhus only, rejecting all other kinds of association. And by doing so, one will have ample opportunity to hear the sadhus, who can cut to pieces the bonds of illusory affection in the material world. It is a fact that the material world is a great illusion because everything appears to be a tangible reality, but at the next moment evaporates like the dashing foam of the sea or a cloud in the sky. A cloud in the sky undoubtedly appears to be a reality because it rains, and due to rains, so many temporary green things appear. But in the ultimate issue, everything disappears, namely the cloud, rain, and green vegetation, all in due course. But the sky remains, and the varieties of sky or luminaries also remain forever. Similarly, the absolute truth, which is compared to the sky, remains eternally, and the temporary cloud-like illusion comes and goes away. Foolish living beings are attracted by the temporary cloud, but intelligent men are more concerned with the eternal sky with all its variegatedness. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha Namaum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshavanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaddaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namah Madhuryo Jvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudhapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralamba Rasambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sakchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virabhava Bhomestvam Yadesa Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Pancha kalpatarubhascha krupasindobhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvishe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarva Swapadambojo Radha Marana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadha Śrīmad Ratnangara Singhasanasto Śrīmad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Preshtalibi Sevyamanu Smarami Śrīmad Rasarasarambi Vamshivatatatastita Karshanvenu Swanir Gopir Gopinatha Shri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vrindai Tulsi Devyai Priyayai Keshavasya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Shri Nishinga Jai Nishinga Jai Jai Narasingha Prahlada Desha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bringa Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata Abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mami vaishyasi yuktvaevam atmanam parayanaha sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja Hang tong sarva papebhyo mokshaishami ma shuja. Shushusho sharadhanasya vasudeva kataruchi syan mahat sevaya bipra punyatirtha nishevana shinvatam swakata krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantaksto hyabhadrani vidunoti suhritsatam nashta pareshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatu tamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Tadarajastamo Bhava Kamalobadayaschaye Chaitaiter Anabhidham Stitam Sattve Prasidati Evam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate Vidite Radya Grantischijante Sarva Samshaya Shiyante Chasya Karmani Drishtaivat Manishvare Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Evam Raja Viduranana Jaina Pragna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamidaha Chitva Shreshu Sneha Pashandra Dimno Nishchakrama Bhratri Sandharshi Tattva. Thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the scion of the family of Ajamita, firmly convinced by the introspective knowledge, prajna, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation as directed by his younger brother Vidura. So the verse begins with thus, evam, thus, means that as a result of what's happened before, which is the strong preaching of Vidura to Dhritarashtra, thus the following has occurred. Raja, the king, Dhritarashtra, Vidurena Anujena, by his younger brother Vidura, prajna, chakshu, he's gained introspective eyes, the eyes of knowledge. Prajna is a word which we find in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna asks about who is a stita prajna, or somebody who's actually fixed in consciousness. What are the symptoms of such a person? He asked, how does he sit? How does he walk? How does he speak? And in that section, Krishna elucidates the symptoms of the stita prajna, or the person fixed in consciousness. And at the outset of that discussion, Srila Prabhupada, commenting on Krishna's explication of stita prajna, says that one is especially noted to be in fixed consciousness by what he or she speaks, because a fool is not detected until he speaks. He had nothing to say, and then he said it. And then Krishna gives other symptoms. Prajahati yada kamam sarvam partan manogatan atman yevatmanatishtas stita prajnas tadochate, which means that Prajahati, he gives up. Prajahati yada kaman, all kinds of desires, because the mind is a factory of desires. Prajahati yada kaman, sarvan parta manogatan. Sarvan kaman means all kinds of desires which are manufactured in the mind. And manogatan means that the mind goes. That's what that phrase means. Manogatan means the mind goes. It goes and goes and goes and goes, and it keeps manufacturing more and more desires. So a person who's abandoned these desires, prajahati yada kaman, all kinds of desires which, as in that verse, are described as mental concoctions. These desires are concocted by the mind. They're not substantial. They're, as being described in this end of this purport, those items which are like vapor. They come for some time, they show some form, and then they evaporate. And at the end of the second, at that discussion, Krishna describes, well, first commenting on this verse, Krishna says, Atman yevatmana tushta. Tushta means to be satisfied. And a person who's fixed in consciousness doesn't chase after these concocted desires, but he or she is satisfied in what? In his or her own self. Atman yevatmana tushta. Satisfied in one's own self. Because what we are, which is conscious beings, part and parcel of Krishna, is good enough. We don't need anything else, actually. When one is in the mode of goodness, as described in the second canto of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Partivad dharano dumas tasmad agnis trayimayaha tamasastu rajas tasmat sattvam yad brahmadarshanam. The progression of the modes and their effects on the living entity are described. That the mode of ignorance is like raw wood, and mode of passion is like smoke. Smoke disturbs, but it never serves. And the mode of goodness is like fire. The fire breaks out. Fire can be used for Vedic sacrifice, therefore it's useful. It's useful for many other things. But in this context, meaning one can derive the ultimate benefit of life by performing Vedic sacrifice through fire. And sattvam yad brahmadarshana means that from sattva, one can observe Brahman. One can actually see the spirit. And this is substantiated in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna describes how the person in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance views others. And those who are in the mode of goodness see that there is an eternal living being within each living entity. And this is a learned person. Vidya vinaya sampane brahmaniga vihastani shuni chaiva shupake cha pandita samadarshina. That's not from the 18th chapter, that's from the 5th. I was referring to knowledge from the 18th chapter. But this verse, Vidya vinaya sampane, describes the learned pandit. Krishna says, this person is learned who sees equally the soul within the body of the Brahman, the outcast, the elephant, the dog eater, and so forth, and sees that only the material body is covering that spirit soul. So, Sattvam Yad Brahmadarshanam, from the mode of goodness, one can actually see the truth. And Atman Yevatmana Tushta, one takes satisfaction in that self. He takes happiness in the self alone. Astita Prajna Tadochite. Krishna says that this is called a person who's stita prajna. He's fixed in consciousness. So this is the position that one must reach in order to at least be a dhira. In the last verse, Prabhupada mentions 3 categories of people. He said there's the dhira, and there's also the sannyasi, and then nirottama. So these 3 categories of advancement are progressive. The dhira is the lowest stage. It means that one is situated in the self and not disturbed by these desires that come and go. And I meant to comment that at the end of that section, Krishna gives an analogy. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa prapishanti yadvat. Tavat kamayam pravishanti sarve sa shantam apnoti na kama kami. He says that just as an ocean is always still and doesn't increase its volume, even though millions of rivers are flowing into it at every minute. Similarly, astita prajna is one who isn't changed by the fact that desires are coming into the mental system. And interestingly enough, the desires are still coming in. The mind is still going and the desires are still present. But the person is not a kama-kami. Kama, it means desire, and a kami means one who chases after the desire. So the difference is that a dhira, or a stita prajna, is one who doesn't chase after the desire even though it's present. So it's an interesting distinction. He may observe that it's there, but he's not compelled to chase after it because he's broken association with it. He's no longer considers that that's for me. The reason that I chase after the desire is because I contemplate it. And this is described by Krishna also in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Jayato vishayan pumsam sangas teshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kamat krodho bijayate. And he lists the progression through which one becomes entangled in the material world. And it begins with jayato. Jayato means to contemplate. And if you look that word up in the dictionary, you'll see that it means, the implication of that word is that one looks at an object and thinks, there's something in it for me. That's mine. That's for me. And this is how the Sangha begins. I connect myself, although I'm a conscious living being and I'm separate from matter. Asango kyayam purushaha, the Vedas say, the soul has nothing to do with this world whatsoever. Nothing. Except for his or her attachment to it. That's the only connection we have. And therefore, jayato vishayam pumsam sangas teshu pajayate. One develops a sangha, sa-anga, means you become a part of it when you contemplate it and you meditate on it, which means you look at it and you think, that's for me, I want that. And then the connection begins. Jayato vishayam pumsam sangas teshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama. Then the kama comes. Then the lust, the desire to possess it comes, and one becomes intensely attached to it and connected to it. And this is our connection to the material world. But a person who's stita prajna, he's dhira because he's broken that attachment. He looks at the object and he thinks, it's part of Krishna's creation. It's not for me. It's to be engaged in Krishna's service, but it's not for me to enjoy. And if there are material desires that come into the consciousness, he observes them, but he doesn't react to them. He doesn't chase them. A kama-kami. modern American civilization is based on creating more and more of these desires and then chasing after them. And this is taken as happiness. The more you can chase after the desires, creating artificial desires, things that you don't need. There are millions of things that you don't need that through our modern advertising, people say, you take this, you need that, you need this, and then people take happiness in chasing after it more and more, seeing how much they can chase it, and becoming more and more entangled. But a dhira is one who has seen the world from a different perspective. And Prabhupada gives the example of someone who observes a person drop a $100 bill on the ground. And if you see that, the person drops the $100 bill on the ground, then of course you have a few choices, right? One is you can keep it, and then you're a thief. Then you might wonder, was that picked up on the camera system that I actually stole this man's money? Or you can just leave it, which is also not complete, no satisfaction. Or you can pick it up and give it back to the person. And of course, if you were walking in the parking lot and you found a $100 bill and there was nobody else around, you just pick it up and take it home because you don't know who it belongs to. So Sambandha Gyan, or knowledge of our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is important for breaking this attachment, because once I understand this belongs to somebody else and I see its relationship to the other person, I can just give it back and say, this is for you. If I come in this house, which belongs to Abhay Charan, and I just start helping myself, like I'd really like those Gaura Nitai deities up there. He says, Dear Kula, pack them up, let's take them. Because I think, I don't see anybody else around here. They must be for me. Then I'll create havoc because they're not mine. So a person who identifies with this world as mine and mine to enjoy creates havoc and also creates karma because he's taking things that don't belong to him. And therefore in the Sri Upanishad, Prabhupada describes what is called the Ishavasya spirit, which means seeing everything belongs to Isha, the supreme controller. It doesn't belong to me. Then one can be properly situated in what is called the life of dedication, because we have three choices. You can have the life of material enjoyment, you can have the life of tyag, or renouncing everything, or you can have the life of dedication. Enjoyment of the material world we've already discussed, and it's illegal, and there's a reaction for it. And renunciation of the material world is the opposite side of trying to enjoy it. It means renouncing something that's not yours to renounce anyway. So it's ludicrous. But dedication is the proper path. So there's the dhira, then the sannyasi. And the sannyasi, the word sannyasi is interesting because nyas means where you place something. And you should have a place for everything and have everything in its place. Right? A place for everything and everything is placed. Of a sannyasi, sang means complete. And so a sannyasi means a person who knows where to put everything, where everything goes properly. Like when you place tilak on your body, that's called nyas. This is a nyas. You're placing mantras on your body and you're putting urvapundra to decorate your body as a temple of the Lord. So this is nyas. So sannyas means you know where everything goes. You know how everything fits because it all belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that's where you put it. And then comes Narottama, which is the highest stage. The person develops an actual affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, becomes a lover of the Lord. Dhritarashtra, of course, we'll find out, was a little late in starting his process of devotional service, and also he had offended devotees. In favoring his sons, he had offended the Pandavas, and therefore he was also not able to come to the highest stage. But by the strong preaching of Vidura and by his association, which is getting to the point now of this purport, he was able to at least come to the stage of dhira and become detached from the world. And the word used in the verse is nishchakrama. Nishchakrama means that he got out. He got out of it. Krama means to step. And we're always, because we're living entities, we're individuals. We have the choice of where to go, where to step. And this word krama is used when Krishna describes how we leave the body as well. Ukramantam stitam vapi bhunjanan bhagunam vitam. He says, Ukramantam stitam vapi, the soul situated in the body steps out. He steps out of the body. Ukramantam, steps out of this body into another situation. And we find ourselves as conscious living beings in this world in many different kinds of situations according to our attachment to them. And when the great devotee comes along and preaches to us, then we can extricate ourselves from those temporary situations which will keep us entangled in the material world. We can get out and we can move on. Otherwise, it's impossible. Without outside help, without the association of somebody who's fixed in higher consciousness, we can't move from the situation we're in now to the next situation. We remain entangled in whatever state of consciousness we're in at this particular point. So that brings it to the very important point in this purport that by sadhu sangha, one achieves these kinds of perfection, these gradations of perfection. And there's ample evidence in the Shastra and stories describing how ordinary living beings became elevated to the highest position of consciousness because of sadhu sangha. Let's talk about Narada Muni first, because he's an obvious example who tells his own story in the 5th chapter of the 1st canto of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam when he describes how he became elevated to the position of Narada. And he's describing to his disciple Vyasadeva how he is, that is how Narada has come to understand that he has nothing to do with this world and he's an eternal servant of the Lord. How did it happen? Well, he took the remnants of food of some of the sadhus that were staying at his house. That means there was some intimate connection there. He also heard them chanting. And they stayed at his home. He was just a little boy, 5 years old, and his mother, he was fatherless. So he didn't come from a very high-class background. And his mother had hosted some sadhus as they were traveling through on Chaturmasya, and they would sit down and hear and chant. And they stayed at their home. And by hearing that vibration, by serving them, and then once by their permission, taking the remnants of their food, he was affected by their association. And he had a change of heart. And he became elevated by that association. After the sadhus left, his mother died suddenly. And this little boy, although without a home, without a mother or father, was dhira. He was undisturbed by the situation, and he simply walked away from his family house. And he began wandering in the creation, observing the different energies of the Lord, and sat down in a lonely forest, and there he began to meditate. And he had a transcendental experience where every one of his senses were simultaneously enlivened to serve the Lord. And he was floating in an ocean of bliss, completely separate from his body. And then he suddenly came back into his bodily consciousness. And he was in great anxiety. And then he mechanically tried to recreate that situation of transcendence. And then the Lord spoke to him in an unembodied voice and said, "You're a ku-yogi," means you're not perfect. You're attached to the forest and the mode of goodness and so many things. He said, "Now you won't be able to see me again in this life. You must now perform devotional service throughout your life and come to this position." But then, of course, we hear the description of how when he left his body, it was simultaneously like illumination and the lightning that happens. When the lightning comes, the illumination is automatically there. So when he left his body, he attained perfection. He attained a spiritual body right after leaving this body. Because of you can trace that out to his association with sadhus and that brief encounter he had at their home. And so in the purport, Prabhupada's mentioning how this fortuitous meeting with his spiritual master created his good fortune. And very interesting that when he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada was a young man in his early 20s. And just as he was offering obeisances to this sannyasi who he didn't know, but who a friend had recommended and dragged him to come see, because Prabhupada grew up in a family who, his father was very eager for blessings for his son to become a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. And his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, used to bring every sadhu who would come through town and bring him to the house. And Prabhupada describes some of the sadhus, they required ganja in order to be happy. Like when you bring a sadhu to your house, you have to give him whatever he wants, take care of him. When a guest comes in, you should, take care of every one of his needs. So he would invite sadhus, and some of the sadhus, like that you might see in India, they sit under certain trees and they smoke ganja all day. So even he would provide this ganja to some of the sadhus. It just gives you an idea of the variety of people he was bringing in, and he would have one request: please bless my son that he will become a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. And so Prabhupada had seen all these different kinds of sadhus in his childhood, and he wasn't so impressed with sadhus at all. So when he heard about this, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, no thank you, I don't want to go see him. But his friend said, this one's different, you have to come see. So he dragged him, Srila Prabhupada's friend dragged him to come see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And just as he was offering obeisances and getting up from offering obeisances to the sadhu, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta began giving him service, saying, you're educated young boys, you should preach Krishna, this mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in English. Hare Krishna. And as we heard yesterday, the day before, that the direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal potency. And it's by that particular potency that one comes to see the Lord face to face. So, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes the progressive path of a living entity coming out of the material world. He says, the living entities are floating on an endless river like logs that never come, and that floating never comes to an end, but somehow, by good fortune, one of the logs may wash up on the shore. So similarly, he said, as one is wandering and wandering throughout the Brahmandas, these different universes, then one may come to meet a devotee physician. And then one becomes saved. And what does the devotee physician give? He gives two things. He gives hymns and instructions. So it means he gives mantras, he hands over the mantras, and he also gives instruction how to chant the mantra. And by those, the living entity can extricate himself from the material world. This is the bestowal of mercy by the sadhu. So Prabhupada immediately received from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur this instruction that he kept in his heart for the rest of his life. And he said later on, when he was nearly 7 years old, that it's taken me this long to come to the point to being able to do something about it. And he had tried in various ways. In fact, he was contemplating how he would execute the order of his spiritual master by making a lot of money. Makes sense. If he was going to print books, preach Krishna consciousness in English, he'd need some money. But that fell through. And Prabhupada was forced by Krishna to come to America with no money and no connections and spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And Prabhupada always attributed it to the association of his spiritual master, although it was brief. And he had only a few encounters with his spiritual master. He did receive instructions. And he took those instructions as his life and soul. And Prabhupada especially noted the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushaka hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. That if one's mind is resolute and then he can progress on the path of devotional service. And the Baladev Vidyabhusan gives commentary on that verse, Vishnunath Chakravarti Thakur, and especially notes that the order of the spiritual master is important. So if one can get association with sadhus and get some instruction that one can hold on to and execute, then one that instruction is like a lifeline that can pull one all the way back to home, back to Godhead. One will come to see the Lord face to face by taking that instruction. And of course, there are many verses in the Shastra which describe the effects of sadhu sangha. One famous verse, which was spoken by Lord Kapila Dev to his mother Devahuti, Satam prasangam mama virya sambido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana kata taj joshanadashu apavarga vartmani shradharatir bhaktir anukramishati. And he describes this anukramishati, which means a step-by-step progression in devotional service, which occurs by sadhu sangha. Satam means the truthful, or those who are situated in spiritual life. It means those who are, they have no other purpose in this life except to go back home, back to Godhead. They accept Krishna as the supreme absolute truth. And if you associate with those types of people, what will happen? Satam prasangam amavirya sambido. You will hear a certain kind of vibration. That vibration will enter into your ear, and from the ear it enters to the heart. Satam prasangam avavirya sambido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana kata. So from the karna, the ear, into the hrit. And there it has an effect. It changes your direction in life when you hear that instruction, when you hear the vibration of the satam, of the pure devotees. And what is the direction? Now I'm engaged in pavarga, which means pa, pa, ba, ba, ma. This is an acronym which describes my life in the material world. Pa means that I have to work hard. Everyone has to work hard, right? Or is it just me? And then pa means you have to finial. It means you have to work so hard that foam comes from your mouth. And then ba, there's disappointment, even though I'm working hard. And pa means there's fear, bhayam, as I'm performing my activity. And then ma means mrityu, there's death at the end. Not very good. Better get it fixed. So if you hear the words of the sadhu and the vibration, the beautiful vibrations that come from saintly persons, then what you get is apavarga. It changes your course completely. The akar placed before a word in Sanskrit reverses the meaning, just like there's karma, akarma. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am that akar. Of letters, I am the letter A, right? So you put Krishna in front of pavarga and you get apavarga, which means you're going back to Godhead. You've reversed the process. How does it happen? Satam prasangam, by great association. That's how it all happens. Mama virya sambido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana kata taj joshanad ashu apavarga vartmani. Very quickly one comes onto this path, very quickly. Like immediately, one starts the path by this association of sadhus. And then bhaktir, then it says shraddha, rati, bhakti. So these three stages. It means shraddha, Shankarshan Prabhu very nicely described the progression yesterday, how one gets shraddha. This word shraddha means faith. We describe as faith. Shraddha shabde vishwas kahe surida nishchoy krishne bhakti koila sarva karma krita hoy. The definition of shraddha is that one understands that by performing Krishna bhakti, all other karmas are done. I don't have to do anything else. If I do this one thing, everything else is completed. This is the meaning of faith. And the word shraddha, shrad means heart. And dha is an active verb. It means where you place something. So shraddha means where you place your heart. Was your heart into it? People ask you, was your heart into it? Shraddha means your heart's in it. And that's important because where we place our heart, that's where we go. Ramananda Roy said to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that the body is a chariot and the heart is the driver. And we vote with our feet. If you show up, you don't have to say anything. You're there. No, you don't have to prove anything else. You showed up, right? You voted with your feet. So people go if their heart's into it, they go. If your heart's into devotional service, you'll perform devotional service. You'll show up for the program. You'll be there. And so this shraddha means faith. And this faith, according to the Brihat Naradiya Purana, comes from agyata sukriti. Agyata sukriti means, and Prabhupada described in one place, that every living entity has a bank account in their heart. And every time you meet a devotee, a sadhu, even unknowingly, like yesterday we were out on the street, And it just keeps coming back into my mind, this yagya we performed yesterday on, what was the street corner?
Congress and 6th.
Columbus and 6th?
Congress.
Congress and 6th. The Congress and 6th Street Yagya we performed yesterday, with holy name, distribution of prasadam, and profuse distribution of books, which means over 100 books went out yesterday on those couple of street corners. And many of those people had no idea what they were getting themselves into. You know, they would walk by, they hear the holy name, they get, somebody would stop them and show them a Bhagavad Gita. They even buy the Bhagavad Gita without knowing what it was really. And they get a deposit in that bank account in their heart. They met some devotee whose intention was to give them Krishna. And so Prabhupada describes how when there's enough capital in that bank account, then what happens? Shraddha is born. The faith is born. That's why you see some people, they're walking along and all of a sudden they say, that's a good idea. I'd like to be a Hare Krishna also. Like they see devotees and they think, that's a good idea. Other people think, what are you doing? They can't understand it at all. They don't have any sukriti. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes there's various kinds of sukriti. One kind of sukriti is called Bhakti Unmukhi sukriti. This is the kind of sukriti that you get when you come in contact with devotees. Or the holy name. Actually, even by chanting of the holy name, this kind of sukriti is created within the heart of the conditioned soul. Yadabaso pyudyan kabalita bhava dvanta vibabo drishan tatvandanam api dishati bhakti pranayinim. Rupa Goswami in his Namashtakam says, even a person who's tattva andhanam, andhanam means blind, and tattva andhanam means blind to the truth. He doesn't know anything. He's just wandering around bumping into things here in the material world. But if he hears the holy name, chanted by devotees, then all of a sudden, even such a person becomes aware of bhakti. He can suddenly become aware that there's bhakti, that I should devote myself to God just by that sound vibration. I mean, I remember the first time I had a revelation when I heard the Hare Krishna mantra. I was driving with my mother to a music lesson in Berkeley, California. I'm from the Bay Area of San Francisco. And we were driving from this little town of Lafayette. And my mother used to drive a microbus, it was a Volkswagen bus. And we had the radio on, and the song, My Sweet Lord, came on the radio. And I loved the Beatles, of course, because I was a kid and I had to love the Beatles. I mean, who doesn't love the Beatles? And as the song was coming out, I think, wow, this is great, George Harrison. And all of a sudden, he started chanting Hare Krishna. And I'd seen other people chanting Hare Krishna. I was thinking, what are they doing? You know, I had no idea what they were doing or why they were doing it. But then when I heard George Harrison chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, I thought, something came over me. It's almost my hairs were standing on end. And it was not just because I revered the singer, but because the mantra was there and it all came together in one confluence, you know, that this is spiritual, this is something different, this is, I don't know what it was, but it was wonderful. It changed my life, just hearing that mantra one time. So Rupa Goswami says that this happens when you hear the mantra. So you can hear the mantra and have this experience, suddenly your heart changes. You can, Yadabaso Pyudyan, and he says the Yabas, just the dim reflection of the name, Yadabaso Pyudyan Kavalita Bhava Dvanti Vibabo, it swallows up the darkness of material existence. Even though one is in abject darkness, the holy name, the dim reflection of it, swallows up the darkness. People were coming out of the bars, people coming out of Gold's Gym yesterday, and they come by, they hear the holy name, just the dim reflection of the name, it's going down the street, that beautiful sound, and they hear that one time, and their sins become destroyed, and they can become aware of bhakti. And also, by coming in contact with devotees of the Lord, they meet a devotee, they do some devotional service, they give a donation, knowingly or unknowingly, it goes into their bank account, and then Brihat Naradiya Purana says, as that bank account fills up, then suddenly what happens? Shraddha is born. Then one becomes aware of the fact that I should be a devotee. So before Shraddha comes Agyata Sukriti, means unknown contact with sadhus. Somehow or other one contacts sadhus. That's why it's so important for preachers to infiltrate the world, because people don't know what they're doing. They're in complete darkness. And even unknowingly they do devotional service or they get association with devotees. And then when they have enough capital, sukriti, bhakti unmukhi sukriti, then suddenly they have this qualification for coming into devotional service. And this can happen seemingly suddenly. There's a description in the Bhakti Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami of how one business magnate was walking along and he hears a woman who's sweeping the street and she says, now is the time, now is the time. And because he had accumulated bhakti sukriti already in his heart, although he was totally dedicated to his life of materialism, when he heard this one sound, it came almost as a mantra. Now is the time. And he suddenly gave up everything. And he became dedicated to building a temple for Lord Vishnu. That temple's in Vrindavan. It's called Lal Babu. You can go see that Lal Babu temple. Prabhupada talks about this in the Nectar of Devotion. How this dedicated materialist suddenly became a devotee and built this Lal Babu temple. Beautiful place. And because that Sukriti was ready to fructify in his heart, and suddenly he heard something and said, okay, that's it. I'm going to dedicate myself to devotional service. And so the devotees, they infiltrate society. They go from place to place, home to home, door to door, Prabhupada says, go door to door. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to tell his sannyasis, every day you should go and knock at least 3 doors. And there preach Harikatha. And even if people don't listen, even if they close the door, they'll get the benefit because they'll think, there was some sadhu came to my door. Just that instant of association, they'll get the benefit from that. So, Shraddha is born, and then Rati means that from that attraction grows. When one goes through the process, as Shankarshan Prabhu was explaining yesterday, Adao Shraddha tata sadhusanga ta bhajana kriya tato narta nivriti syat tato nishta ruchis tata. That this progression happens. First there's Shraddha, and then comes bhajana sadhu sangha. Then one wants more association with devotees. And then comes bhajana kriya. One takes it seriously. One takes a vow that I'm going to perform devotional service. Takes initiation and says, this is my path in life. And then comes anartha nivritti at various stages where one has to battle with anishta bhajana kriya, unsteady practice of bhajana kriya. And then gradually, as the anarthas diminish, one comes to the point of steady bhajana kriya. And then one comes to the stage of ruchi. And one starts to get some taste, or rati. One's attracted, actually, to the whole process naturally. And then after rati comes bhakti, or the higher stages of devotional service, which are described after ruchi, and then comes asakti, and then bhava, and then prema. And these happen progressively, and they all start from sadhu sangha. It's so important. And how important is sadhu sangha? Also, just because somebody's related to a devotee in a family, this can also have a major impact on one's life. For instance, Prahlad Maharaj was such a great devotee of the Lord, the pinnacle of pure devotion. When the Lord asked him, take a benediction, he said, I don't want anything. I'm not a merchant. I didn't come to you to ask for a benediction. You're my Lord, I'm your servant, that's it. And Bhagavan said, take a benediction. That's what I do. I give benedictions. You take. And he said, okay, if you want me to take, you're ordering me to, I'll take a benediction. Here's what I want. Deliver my father. The father who just tried to kill him in many different ways. And so Prahlad Maharaj is so pure-hearted, he said, please deliver my father. Lord Nrsimhadev said, that's already done. The generations of your family before and after are already delivered because of your presence here. And in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, he mentions this, that Vipradvishad gunayatara vindanava padara vinda vimukat swapacham varishtam, that a person who has all Brahminical qualities but he's not a devotee can't deliver even himself. But a devotee of the Lord, even if he's a shwapacha, it means he comes from a family of dog eaters. If he's a devotee, a sincere devotee, he can not only deliver himself, but his whole family. His whole family gets delivered. Now, Prahlad Maharaj, Sanatana Goswami mentions in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita that Bali Maharaj, you know how much mercy he got. The Lord put his lotus feet on his head. And Sanatana Goswami says, why did he get so much mercy? Not from what you think is apparent, but actually he got so much mercy because he was the great-grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. That's why he got so much mercy. And he goes on to say that Banasura, in the pastimes of Lord Krishna, later on got so much mercy from Lord Krishna because he was also in that family lineage coming all the way down from Prahlad Maharaj. It was a whole family of demons, a whole lineage of demons. But because Prahlad Maharaj was in the family, so many people got this favor of the Lord because Krishna is so it's not what you know, it's who you know. This is Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu used to say this. It's not what you know, it's who you know and what you are that counts. And so in devotional service, we want the sadhu sangha. We connect ourselves to a sadhu. Vaishnavism means putting yourself under another Vaishnav. Because as Sankarshan Prabhu was saying yesterday, Krishna says, someone who says they're my devotee, they're not my devotee. But someone who says, I'm the devotee of the devotee, okay, you're good. You're okay. And in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Vrindavan Das Thakur makes an astounding statement. He says, someone who's a devotee of Lord Narayan, there's some question, maybe he'll become perfect, maybe he won't. But someone who's the devotee of Lord Narayan's devotee, no question, he'll become perfect. He'll be saved. If you follow the pure devotees of the Lord, you say, I'm under them. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, his prayer is, what's his prayer? He says, let me become the dog of a Vaishnav. I want to become the kukur. And where will I be? I want the Vaishnav, they'll tie me to the porch, their porch. The Vaishnavs, they'll be inside doing their bhajan. They'll tie me to the porch. What'll I eat? Whatever they throw out onto the porch. Their remnants, they just throw it out the window and say, that's what I eat. That's my food. The remnants of the Vaishnava. And if anybody comes to bother them, I'll guard that house. They're not coming near my masters, these Vaishnavas. This is the mood of the Vaishnava. I'm the devotee I'm the servant of the servant. Prabhupada said, you become the servant's servant, 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 1,000,000 times removed. He said, that is liberation. That is liberation. So Vaishnavism means not direct, but become the servant of the servant of the servant. And by that kind of sangha, in that mood of service to the Vaishnavas, one becomes quickly elevated to the highest position of life. And that's very much apparent here. And the Vaishnavas, actually, it's not that hard to get their association because really they're going out of their way to give association. Just like Vidura, he went back to get Dhritarashtra and said, come on, let's go. That's their mood. So if you put a little effort into it, to try to be in the path of a Vaishnava, try to be under a Vaishnava somehow, the Vaishnavas are very accommodating. They're like desire trees. They can fulfill our desires in different ways. So now there's a couple minutes we can have a question.
I read somewhere within Prabhupada's literature is that the father and the older brother is considered a spiritual, the person's spiritual master, and that we shouldn't instruct them. That was in there somewhere in Prabhupada's writings or sayings. And here we see Vidura, younger brother, instructing elder brother. So wondering, when is it appropriate for us to instruct our father and older brother?
Well, it's appropriate to instruct anyone when you see the opening. I had personal experience of this with my mother. Most devotees know it's very difficult to preach to your parents because no matter what the position, they always say, come on, you're my kid, don't tell me anything, And my mother was she was an intellectual. She was a college professor and interested in Krishna consciousness from a sociological point of view, not from the point of view of the absolute truth. Her whole life, she showed interest in it, but just from the point of view of sociology. But after my father died, they had been married for about 70 years. And then my father died, and then she started to dwindle after that. And 2 months before she died, suddenly she became open, changed person, open to hearing about Krishna consciousness. And as soon as I saw the opening, I just started pouring in as much as I possibly could and giving her whatever I could. And this is the injunction Ishvare taradineshu bali sheshu dusatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakroti samadhyamaha. The preacher is one who's looking for the balis. That means those who are innocent. They're innocent and open, and then he or she pours in as much mercy, kripa, as possible when that opening is there. In the austerities of speech in the Bhagavad Gita, you'll notice in the 17th chapter, Prabhupada mentions that in his purport, that one should not preach to those who are not his disciples. That means that unless somebody's submissive and they come to you and say, I'm open, then it's not your duty to try to bend their ear. So what does that mean? We go out on Sankirtan, we're meeting all kinds of people, preaching to them, we go everywhere. Well, we're looking for the opening. So if you see a relative, an older brother, a president of the United States, anyone, doesn't matter, if suddenly they become open and they have some capacity, then it's your duty to pour in as much mercy as possible at that point. So preachers have to be aware. They have to be aware, where's the opening? Where can I pour in? And they also have to be aware where it's not appropriate to try to pour it in, because it will be rejected. A couple more, we have a few more minutes. Yes?
Prabhu, you said that you emphasize the importance of sadhu sangha as the foundation of our progression. I was wondering, in the higher stages, is it still required? Do those personalities still seek it?
Absolutely, it's always required. In fact, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions the Bhakti Lata growth, this is through Shravanadi Jala. You water the seed of bhakti in your heart, and it grows from this world through the coverings of the universe, through the Viraja river, all the way to Goloka, and entwines itself around the lotus feet of Krishna. And so a person has dual citizenship. He's living in this world, but he's also living in Goloka. We see that with Uddhava earlier in the Bhagavatam. I can't go into it right now, but in that section, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was giving this instruction about the Bhakti Lata and watering, he said, even after the creeper has grown all the way to Goloka Vrindavan, one requires the sadhu sangha and the hearing and chanting. The process must go on. It's not, and in fact, it becomes more relishable and more intense. The more one advances in devotional service, the more one is able to take advantage of sadhu sangha, because it's a state of heart. When one's heart is, when we're free of envy, the more one becomes free of envy. Envy means, according to Jiva Goswami, the inability to tolerate the eminence of another. And the more I think of myself and my own ability in this world, the less I'm able to take advantage of sadhu sangha, because I think, I'm all right, I'm good. You meet people all the time, you take a look at this book, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay, right? You meet people all the time. And this is the mantra that comes out of the false ego, I'm good. And what do I need that guy for? But when I'm empty, when I'm a kinchana gochara, means that I don't have anything, I'm bereft. I realize I don't have anything, I need shelter. Then there's this opening for, I begin to intensely look for sadhu sangha, and those who become very advanced, Sanatana Goswami describes in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita how they have dainya, which means utter humility. Even though they're becoming more and more qualified, they have less and less opinion of themselves and their abilities. And in that state, they're able to see the good qualities in others and appreciate them and take more advantage of them. And in fact, Prabhupada also mentions that, as we were talking about sannyas and becoming detached from the world, and he says in the second canto of the Bhagavatam that requires higher association. Sannyas doesn't mean you just dump everything and walk away. It means you're walking into something that's more secure. The kind of association I have in this world, in my family life and so forth, through familial affection and so forth, it's insubstantial. It will evaporate at some point. And sometimes, even before I'm forced out of it, there is a change of heart and people say, I don't like you anymore. I don't like you either. Well, let's break up. They do that all the time. But when one actually becomes advanced, he or she develops a taste for higher association. That is, with devotees who are satam, who are absolutely committed to devotional service. And Prabhupada said that when one takes sannyas, for instance, he must be moving into this kind of relationship with higher association, because that's our protection. And that's what progression means. And Rupa Goswami delineates this in the Nectar of Instruction in the verse, Dadati pratigurnati guyamakyati prichyati. Bhunkte bhojayate chaiva shadvidam pratilakshanam. That these exchanges of love between one devotee and another are what connect us. This is our foundation. It's foundational. So it's very, very important to cultivate these kinds of intimate relationships with advanced devotees, where we can bare our heart and we can take good instruction, because as we move forward in devotional service, we'll be tested in many, many ways and challenged in intense ways during our life. So we have to have that shelter. Guyamakyati prichyati. You have to have intimate association with advanced devotees where you can go and say, this is how I'm feeling, this is the problem I'm facing right now, kindly instruct me, please help me. We see that I did a seminar recently called The Anatomy of a Fall Down. And in it I was trying to identify all the different factors that would cause someone to fall down. And sometimes we see people doing devotional service for a long time and then suddenly, what happened? And one of the things that I find very consistently is if somebody isolates themselves and they don't have intimate association with godbrothers, for instance, and peers, and those who are more advanced. One thing is, we should never think I'm beyond chastisement. We should always be open that let somebody more advanced come in and chastise me. The minute I think, I don't want that, that's dangerous. We should be thinking, let me go somewhere where there's a higher Vaishnav that's going to come down on me a little bit, and not think like, I want to be isolated, I don't want to hear that anymore. That's dangerous. We can start developing more and more coverings over us, and then nobody can tell us anything. Then it's very dangerous. And also, I should never think I'm liberated. Prabhupada said, as soon as you think you're liberated, that I can associate with beautiful women, it won't affect me. Boom, you're finished. It's over. You'll start to go down right at that point. We should always be in a careful state of consciousness. That means I'm careful because I feel like I could fall down at any minute. This is actually a qualification of a pure devotee. Prahlad Maharaj exhibited in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. He said, I'm not afraid of you. Your sharp pinching teeth, your high wedge-like ears, your mane soaked with blood, everyone's running away, the demigods are running away. I'm not afraid. I know who you are. What I am afraid of, Vishnu Maya. I see that and I'm very much afraid. He said, one little slip of my consciousness and I'm again back in this wheel, and who knows when I'll come back out again. That should be, this feeling of being careful. And this means that I'm always taking shelter of more advanced devotees as much as possible, and open to, please instruct me, chastise me. And you have to be in association with people who are more advanced to get that kind of instruction and chastisement. So it's very, very important to maintain that and keep that. That's the progressive path. Sadhu Sangha is the beginning, the middle, and the end. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his instructions to Sanatana Goswami, you'll notice in Sanatana Shiksha, he goes on for pages and pages and pages and pages and pages talking about Sadhu Sangha and how important it is and how this is the essence of devotional service. It's how it starts, it's how it's maintained, and it's how one comes to the perfectional stage of devotional service. It's all Sadhu Sangha. Because, and Vidura says, Yudhishthira says this to Vidura, Tatavida Bhagavatas tirta bhuta swayam vibo tirta kurvanti tirtani swantakstena gadabrita. Yudhishthira says to Vidura, Mahatma Vidura, who's just saved Dhritarashtra, you are a holy place personified. You're a walking holy place because you carry Krishna within your heart. Even more importantly, you carry devotion, pure devotion for Krishna within your heart, which means that's the internal potency. We were just reading yesterday in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that that's the Swarup Shakti, the original internal potency, which is coming from Srimati Radharani. That's what connects us to the spiritual world, enlivens our devotional service, and that's what pure devotees have in their heart. And so if we associate with devotees, we become clarified, purified. Everything comes from that connection. So we have to cultivate that as much as possible and continue to cultivate it. Go premanande arivaribo vancha kopadrubascha kripasandabevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Go premanande.